Next we're going to move on to our photo negatives envelope. And this piece of cardstock is 8 inches by 6 inches. And you need to score the 6-inch side at 2 1/4 inches and 4 5/8 inches. And then on the 8-inch side you need to score at 3/4 of an inch and at 7 1/4 inches. That'll give you 3/4 of an inch on each side. And you'll notice when you score you have a smaller section up here. What you need to do is you need to cut out the 3/4 inch piece down to your first 2 1/4 inch score line on both sides. And this is what it will look like when it's done. You have 2 flaps here. This is the front, the back, and then the flap. So let's get those pieces cut out. I'm going to do it from the back because it's a little bit easier for me to see. And the same thing on this side. Sometimes it's kind of hard to see on plain white cardstock those 2 marks. So there you go. The next thing you need to do is fold this piece up and reinforce your fold. And then you need to fold this piece down, reinforce your fold. Then these 2 tabs, they fold to the back. And that's what keeps your envelope together. Now I'm going to cut these in just a little bit. And then on this you can actually use your ATG. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm just going to apply some ATG to each side. Glue that, just adhere that closed. And there you have your envelope. Now I'm going to take my scallop punch and do the corners just so they match. And then I'm going to ink the entire edge of everything. So here's my finished photo negative envelope. And I did cut a finger hole here. You don't need to. It's large enough that it should be okay. And this just sits into the back of this. And there you have a place for your negatives. Here's your CD pocket. Here's your little journaling tag. And your negatives all in one place. Our next step is to get our holes punched. Now I chose to use my Bind It All. I used 12 holes. If you choose to use book rings, I would say no less than 3 of them. I would put the first one in the middle, and then I would measure down 3/4 of an inch, make that the center of my next hole, and measure up 3/4 of an inch and put that 3rd hole right there. Just remember that the size of your book ring will be determined by how many pages you have and how thick they are. And keep in mind you still have a cover to add to the thickness. So I believe 7 Gypsies makes larger rings. You might be able to get larger rings at the office supply store. Let me show you how I measured my holes for my Bind It All. I just turned my page sideways and I measured up 3 1/2 inches. My page is 7 inches. And I'm going to make it a little further in here so I can see it once it's in my machine, in my Bind It All. Mark my center. And then I took the center mark and I lined it up with my arrow in the middle. And I punched my first set of holes. And then I moved it over so I was in the next to the last hole is where my hole guide went. So you only have 1 hole showing. I punched my next set. And then I turned it around so that the back is facing. And you want to go to your 5th hole. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That 5th hole, goes in your hole guide, and then you punch again, and that will give you even spacing on your holes. Before we move on to our covers, I wanted to show you my completed page with my CD and my negative holder. I decided to switch out the tag and the negative holder in black, and then I made a black page, used a white tag and a white negative holder, and I chose this purple for my cover outside, and then I've got the same design in grayish black, and I'm going to use that on the inside. And I also wanted to show you an idea for decorating a page if you're going to use plain white. This is a stamp set called Picture Perfect, and it's by Close to My Heart, and it's got all kinds of really neat photo stamps. It's Caught in the Act, Gotcha, Unforgettable. It's got a camera, click, 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 say cheese. It's got a little frame for like a piece of film strip, captured moments. It's kind of a really nice piece stamp set for photographs. So I just kind of decorated a page up just to show you. I haven't decorated my pages. This is a sample page I made, a test page, and I made some changes on it, so I just thought I'd show you on this one what I did. Okay, for chipboard, when I recycle if I'm going to cover it, if I'm going to wrap my chipboard for my covers, I recycle chipboard. My husband brings chipboard home from the hardware store from their unused signs, so this is a triple thickness because it's pretty thin chipboard. And your chipboard sizes need to be 6.5 by 7.5, and you'll need 2 pieces. And then your cover paper needs to be 8.5 by 9.5. And what I do is I allow an extra inch all the way around my chipboard so that I have a good wrap. So that gives me an extra inch, just like that. Okay, we're ready to wrap our chipboard for our covers. And I'm just going to flip this over, and I always make a 1-inch mark in both directions so I have a guideline to lay down my chipboard, and I end up with it pretty straight that way. So I'm just going to run a couple runs of ATG just to keep it in place. Press that real good. And then I'm going to miter my corners, leaving 1/8 of an inch on all 4 corners. I had to find a pair of scissors, sorry. Okay. There we go. Now I'm just going to kind of train my chipboard around the edge. I always do this. Just bring it up and get it ready to go. Now in the past I've used my ATG gun on these flaps, and I've decided this time I'm going to use some score tape, so I will get that score tape on and show you the position of it, and I'll be right back. Okay, I've got my score tape on the outside of each of the flaps and then on just on the edge of my chipboard. And I'm going to try the tuck method like I learned on Club Scrap and from Kathy at Paper Phenomenon. So let's go ahead and pull our score tape. I've got my tape off. Now I'm going to wrap my long sides first. And then I'm going to use their method of the tucking. Just tucking this corner in so it's covered. Just run your scoring tool right at the edge there on all 4 corners just so it tucks the corner in. And then when you bring your paper up, you have a real nice finish on your corners. I don't don't concern myself with how tight this inside edge is because I'm going to be putting paper on top. And there's my cover. Okay, now we are ready to put our lining paper on our covers. And I get mine within 1/8 of an inch all the way around. I literally measure this piece for the front cover and another piece for the back cover. I never pre-cut my inside lining. So the sizes I give in the tutorial, please measure your lining area before you cut. So I've got the score tape around the outer edge, and I'm just going to run a few lines of ATG. In the middle. And then I'll pull my tape. Now I know they say you can just tear the score tape with your fingers, but I have found it's easier for me to get the paper lining off when I've cut it rather than tear it. Now I'm just going to place my cover like this. Make sure it's straight. And there's my finished cover. Now I am going to burnish this real good around the edge. And the other hint that I'm going to give you is if you're using dark paper like this, I always ink the edge of my dark papers because most single-sided papers have a white back on them, and when you cut, that white edge is going to show. So I've inked my black paper here. We're now ready to put our holes in our covers, and I'm going to use the same method as I did for my pages. I found my center point. My cover is 7.5 inches, so 3 3/4 inches. I'm going to do the first cut. Okay, that was a tough one. And then I'm going to move over to the second hole. Now I'm going to turn this sideways so I can get a better grip on this. There, that was easier. And then I'm going to flip my cover and come into the fifth hole. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That goes on my hole guide. And there's our holes in our cover. Well, here's my finished album. The CDs and photo negatives in this book are from 2006 and 2007. So I made a couple of charms. I cut out the numbers on my Cricut and put them on white cardstock and then just cut around them. Dangle charms are from Tim Holtz. Not sure how I messed up my wire, but I sure did. Not real noticeable when it's standing up. And then for a closure, I used a couple of the Zutter rivets, pounded them in, and I used a hairband. I love my hairbands for my closures. And just pounded that in, covered them up on the inside with matching paper. And then on my pages, I went black and white, then black and white. Of course, my pages aren't decorated yet. They may be someday. And that's my finished album. Just put my charms back where you can see them. And these charms are for when they're on the shelf. They'll hang like this. So I know what years are in this book. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial. Thanks for stopping by Jen's Creation Station. Have a great day.